Today, the presentation I'm going to give to you is one of my favourite subjects because it is all about branding. Because your brand is going to be fundamental to your business. And so I want to talk about the structure that we use to manage the brand here at Blam, to give you a bit of an insight about the things you need to speak about and the things that you need to think about when you're talking about your brand, because your brand should be a motivation and an inspiration to you, and it should be something that you can be really proud of and something that you can't wait to share with the world. And when you first start out in business, one of the first things you're going to be doing is, first of all, thinking about your business name, and your brand will be connected to that name for the rest of the business life. Occasionally people change their name and have sub-brands and things that sit underneath it, but your name is going to be really, really important to the way that your brand evolves. And so the first thing that we talk about with your brand is what you're going to name the business as the first thing that you think about. Now, some people agonize over this, and I do quite a lot of coaching with people when they're thinking of their first company name, and it can be a real sort of headache for them to get to grips with what they should call themselves. But I always say, just remember that your company name, your business name, your brand name needs to be something that you love, and don't worry too much about what other people think, within reason. Obviously it needs to be something that is acceptable and not, not too edgy, unless you're going for an edgy brand, which is absolutely fine. But you're the one that's got to live with it. You're the one that's got to justify it. You're the one that's got to go through all the processes that I'm going to talk about in a minute with that brand. And if you're not really connected with the name of your business, it's going to hold you back. So Blam as a brand, as you can see there, is a brand that I absolutely love. And when we first started out designing the logo, which is connected directly to the name, that logo for me was something that I was really passionate about. I've got an example here actually of what our logo looked like when we first started out. I've got on a bit of merch there. I found one of our old t-shirts, and that brand there really represented what we were all about, because as a business we came shooting out of the gates, and Blam Websites, as that full brand was called, was such a dynamic and what I wanted to be an inspiring brand. And so that explosion of the Blam brand really represented what it was that we were all about. So your logo is something that you've also got to be connected with. So when you're designing the logo or you're working with a designer, make sure that your logo is something that you love, following clear design principles. But don't worry too much about what other people think, because with your logo, if you show 10 different people your logo and ask their opinion, you'll get 10 completely different answers, because it's a subjective thing. But you need to make sure that you get a proper qualified graphic designer to design your logo, because you may not know all the details about what's right and wrong with graphic design. And it drives me nuts as a qualified graphic designer myself when I see logos that break the design principles that are really obvious to somebody that knows what they're looking for. So get a proper graphic designer, somebody who knows what you're doing, who knows what they're doing, who's got a track record to design your logo, but you're the one that's got to love it. Now, from your logo, the next thing you're going to be thinking about is what we call your brand identity, or some people call it your corporate identity. Now, back when I first started out as a graphic designer, that was one of my first jobs. I used to be able to map out the brand and corporate identity for a business from their logo. And this really is where you take the logo, you take the colours, the fonts, the imagery and all the assets that are connected to that logo from a design perspective, and you map them out. So you're going to be having things like the fonts that are going to be used throughout, and typically you only really want no more than 3 fonts, usually 2 main fonts for your business. You want the colours, and the colours will also be defined both with hex codes and Pantone. And those are the two main different ways of viewing colours. Hex is what you see on a computer screen, and Pantone is if you get stuff printed. And then you've got things like your assets, which would be things like your images, and then your sort of icons that you might use, and all the different things that are completely connected to your logo and your brand and your corporate identity. And so this now is starting to build a picture of what your brand looks like from a visual perspective, because you're starting now to define something that's got continuity. And the reason I was so passionate about corporate identity is because when you set out these brand guidelines and you adhere to them, straight away your business is going to start looking more professional, more consistent, and it's going to start giving confidence to the people that are looking at your brand, because sometimes they might not even be able to articulate why, but they'll be seeing something that is consistent. What drives me nuts is when you get a website built and it's got thousands of different fonts on it, different colours. Clearly it's not been designed by somebody who knows what they're doing. And the person that designed it might think it's brilliant because they've got all these different colours and fonts going on. On a website, never use more than 3 fonts. 2 is all you really need, and make sure they're consistent in the way that you use them. So when you're doing your brand identity, you can actually go into quite a lot of detail with this. You can end up saying, if you're going to use headers, it must look like this. If you're going to use body copy, it's got to look like this. And you can really dig under the bonnet, and a proper graphic designer that's building out your corporate identity will nail all of that down. But the important thing is, if you're in the early stages of business, just make sure you've got this consistency, so that anything you do, if you're producing a leaflet or if it's your website or a landing page or an ad, then this stuff is adhered to. And then you start to build your brand identity. Now with that, you're then going to start thinking about another really important one, your tone of voice. What tone of voice are you going to be using for your business? Are you going to be a very professional and technical tone of voice? Is it going to be a quirky or a funny tone of voice? Are you going to be very relaxed? What kind of tone of voice, what sort of language are you going to use? And articulate that so that when you're briefing somebody who might be running ads for you or writing copy for a leaflet or a website, whatever it might be, that tone of voice is understood. And the tone of voice can often be dictated by your core values, something that is very close to my heart, and you'll get another fancy whiteboard presentation all about core values as well. But your core values, these are the things that really make you tick, that influence your tone of voice and bring the whole brand identity together. So all of this starts to come together as something that you can really build upon and have a consistency throughout. So once you've got all of this, you can then start thinking about some more practical things. So you could start thinking about your assets in a bit more detail. So it might be that you're going to do your website, which needs to follow all of this criteria. It might be that you've got something simple like business cards. Remember those? They're still really useful if you go networking, trust me. And it might be leaflets. It might be that you're producing some kind of prospectus. There we go. My spelling's not my strong point. Or it could be a brochure. So all of these things are now coming together to be reflected by your brand identity. And then you can start thinking about things like, one of my favourite things, I'm going to go into this a bit more detail in a minute, merch. Your merch. We love our merch. What your merch does mean, people love a bit of a badge or a t-shirt or a hoodie, and these kind of things can really help enhance your corporate identity and really bring it all together and enhance that brand. And with that merch, from the tone of voice, from the brand identity, you're likely to be using your slogan. And your slogan is really a combination of your tone of voice, some of your core values and your corporate identity that really reflects what the brand vision is. And the brand vision is the all-encompassing thing that all of this brings together. And the slogan is the thing that reflects that. Let me show you what I mean. So and these things can evolve, by the way, so your slogan can evolve. So when we first started out, this was back in 2015. Typically, according to my corporate identity background, a logo should evolve roughly every 5 years. And because that's kind of my background, I've made sure at Blam our logo has evolved exactly every 5 years. So this was 2015. And back then, we were all about education. And so Blam Academy, hashtag Blam Academy, that was our thing and that was our slogan and that's what we pushed out there. But then we got a little bit more sophisticated. So back in 2020, we had a rebrand and this was our new logo. Now what you will find is the Pantone colour blue was carried over from the original blue that we used in the Explosion logo. So that the evolution was quite significant, but there was some carryover. And the purpose of this logo was, I felt we were 5 years old and I felt like we'd grown up a bit. And the original logo was what we used with that dynamic push to get ourselves into the marketplace. But then we kind of evolved and we became a little bit more grown up. We got a little bit more traction. We were a bigger business and this logo, I wanted to reflect that. And then on the back, you will see, work like a maniac. That is our slogan. That reflects our tone of voice, our core values, and it brings it into the corporate identity. That font will be the specific font that we use to make sure that it was consistent with everything else. That was 2020. And then with that, we also had other merch as well. So you'll see this one. We've got the Blam Certified Partners Program. So that's one that the Blam Certified Partners got. And you can see the brand is the same. And then you've just got a little certified partner underneath. And then finally, this year, we're now 2025, we've had a new logo. And we'll put the logo up now so that you can see it. I haven't got an example of it at the moment. We've literally just rebranded. But anything you see with Blam now will be the Blam digital brand. And that's another subtle evolution, but it's moved us forward and we keep the slogan, work like a maniac, because that's really what we're all about. That's really where we want to be. We want to be seen as encouraging entrepreneurs to work like maniacs, and that ties in to everything else. So when you put all of this together, what you've got is a brand that's consistent in every single interaction. So, I mean, this would also, you know, lead on to your assets. It's also going to lead on to your ads, you know, any content that you write for blogs and that kind of stuff. It all ties in to this whole thing of your tone of voice there for your ads, but then the imagery that you would use will come from your assets that you've got here. Any ads that are run would also have all the corporate identity for colours on, etc. And this consistency brings everything together, and when you've got it, it gives you a template to use so that no matter what you produce for your business, you can be as creative as you like within these parameters, so that everything leads to the vision, and the vision is the thing that pulls this all together. And from when you do your brand to you think about your logo and your name, it's all tied into that bit at the top which you're leading to, and everything talks to that vision through the brand. I get really excited about this sort of stuff. This is kind of where I came from, and when you apply this to your business, it just makes you feel so much more connected to it, gives you so much more direction, and outwardly you're going to look like a professional business. I hope that's been useful. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, tell me what else you would like me to talk about. I'm going to go into a bit of a deeper dive on some other videos to some of these in particular. But I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you on the next one.